get started. So again, we have three phenomenal speakers here who are joining us today. I think we should get started with introductions. So if you could share a little bit about who you are, your background, and kind of your ties to Web3 and how you got involved, that would be great. And we can start with Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Roker-Jones. I am the CEO of The Curious Culture, and it's all about leveraging curiosity to build inclusive workspaces. And I got into Web3 from through a young, I guess you could say a college student I was helping him build up his LinkedIn, and he was telling me all about, blockchain, and he was so excited, and he was like, listen, you need to jump on this now and learn about it. So I started learning and getting myself into different communities and just got really excited about what's available. And for me, it's ensuring that we don't leave anyone behind, and that we onboard and educate marginalized groups and ensure that what Web3 is being created for and who is being created for is all those who want to be part of it. And there's no being exclusive in this area.
Shondra, do you want to go next?
Hi, friends. Some of y'all I know that I didn't expect to be in here. Thanks and hi. Okay, so I am Shondra Washington. I'm the CEO of Blackout. We are one of the first and fastest growing Black-only Web3 communities. My journey into Web3 was back in 2017, when it wasn't called Web3. And I was an investment banker, or tech investment banker, and that was during the ICOs and the ICOs and all those things. And so I was tasked with doing a lot of research on the utility of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And fast forward to December of 2021, where me and my co-founders decided to start Blackout, where we launched in February of 2022. And we are, like I said, an online community, a token-gated community, where we onboard folks, Black folks specifically, into Web3. We help each other buy. We do group buying of blue chip NFTs. We host in real life events, and we talk about fun stuff and joy. And so I'm excited to be here.
And Anne.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself, but also I just have to shout out Blackout and Shondra. I'm actually a community member. I love it in there. All the things she said and more. I think it does a wonderful job, and there's so many people in that community, both from people who are, OGs in the space to people who are like brand new. And I think it's like an amazing place for learning, and I love it. So I thank you, Shondra, for all you do for Blackout. But I'm Anne. I've been in tech for the last 12 years. I'm specifically a product manager. I've been in Web3 since 2017, when someone told me I should go to an event called Are We in a Cryptocurrency Bubble? Which, for those of you who've maybe heard about the space a bit, been in it a little bit longer than other people, you'll know that we actually had a crash back in 2018 as well, which we rebounded from, and now we're in a new crash cycle. It all goes in cycles. But that's when I first started getting into blockchain specifically, and actually started working at Consensus, which, for those of you who are unaware, pretty large company in the space, specifically working with Ethereum. And I was working for a pretty small startup in that space, what the Consensus, working on how do we make it so that anyone can work with smart contracts without necessarily learning how to code. And I've also done talks and also teaching anywhere from Morgan State, Columbia, West Point, talking about emerging technologies, and just love helping people learn about this in a language and in a way that makes sense to them, because there's a lot of jargon in this space that is really confusing to people, and people are like, what do we mean by gas? The gas is really high, the gas is really low, and it's not the gas I put in my car. So I just love helping people understand this in words that they can relate to.
All right, thank you for sharing that. And let's go to the question that we've all been waiting for, that I've been waiting for, because I'm pretty much a newbie in the Web3 space, which is, what the heck is Web3? What is it? That was like the most requested question, is I don't know what it is. And this is a free for all. Any of you can answer it, or maybe have your own definition of what it means to you.
So I guess I'll start, ladies. So essentially, if you think about like Web 1, which was us just consuming information with the internet, basically us reading things off of going to www and hearing all of that sound in there, whatever. And then Web 2, you think about sites like Facebook or Instagram, where you were not just consuming, but actually interacting with the information that was being provided to you. So you were also uploading your own information. And that's also where your personal information was being shared with other entities that you didn't necessarily give access to your information, or even know that your information was being shared. Web 3, I think, is really about ownership. And it is about you owning your information, deciding who gets your information, deciding not to share your information. So, you know, there's platforms that are being built where the only thing that you have to share is your wallet address, and that's it. There's no connection to who you are personally. And so when I think of Web3, I think of ownership.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, Marie, you were about to.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, adding on to that, a lot of people will use it as an umbrella term for everything that is like blockchain and decentralized. So not everything that is blockchain is necessarily decentralized, even though that is like one of the core principles under blockchain, and people argue with you about that. But there's also things where things that are not on the blockchain that are decentralized also get grouped into Web3. So there's a lot of this ownership piece, because really the whole premise of blockchain was that you have this ownership, that there's not like a third party that needs to be able to like control like who has ownership or validate it. You really have this thing that is permissionless and distributed and decentralized, that allows people to have ownership without necessarily having like third party intermediaries. So a lot of this technology, whether you're talking about cryptocurrency or whether you're talking about like decentralized social media networks, all of this stuff kind of gets grouped into this category of Web3.
And I like to say that it's decentralization at the intersection of creativity and innovation, because I think what it does is it brings, it allows content creators to really have, and everyone's talked about it, ownership of what they create. And we've seen in the past where, like right now, if any of these other platforms decide to shut down, anyone who's creating content on that loses their content. And now it's this sense of ownership, but it also is it's equity. I feel like it's now what the web was designed for, is to be equitable, where we can put out our, create and put out our content and not have to worry about our data being used or our content being taken down. It's really empowering people to feel like they can now take control of the things that they create, the communities that they're a part of. So for me, it's looking at it through the lens of equity.
That's super insightful. And I feel like this question is going to come up. But Anne, what is a blockchain? Like, what is a blockchain? For those who are like non-technical at all, or they've heard it a lot of times and they're like, I don't know what that means. Like the simplest term, like what is it and how is it being used?
Can I go? Because I am the non-technical person.
Yeah, yeah, so totally.
Me, I think visual always helps. So I say, think of a Lego, like if you have like just a flat Lego, I forget what they're called, and you're building on top of that. And that's the visual I think about when I think of blockchain, as far as like what's being built, but also what's being connected and the security level of it. So that's just my simple Marie version of what blockchain is. But I'm sure Anne and Shondra are going to have a better definition.
I'm not technical. So like, I am not the one, but Anne, go ahead and I'll try and build on top of it.
Yeah, so some people like listen to this explanation and they're like, what? And some people are like, oh, thank you, that wasn't technical at all. So we'll see where this lands. But so I think one of the things is when we think about like traditional money, right? Before your banks had computers and everything was like written down on like a ledger. So you think of like Uncle Scrooge, he had a ledger and he could like go in and cross it off, and like Uncle Scrooge, you know, like Scrooge or whatever, he was in charge of this ledger. You know, he would be able to like look at everything, see how the accounting was going. He was the person that decided, like, yes, if Shondra says that she has $5 million in the bank, that is true. She's not lying, and therefore she can actually decide to like move, like, let's say 100,000 over to this other person or other bank, right? Then there were computers, but there were still, these computers were still centralized. They're still owned, you know, by the banks, right? So this idea of the blockchain is really think about saying, like, let's say we had a way to look at who owns what, but in a way that we don't necessarily need a third party. So think about how, you know, let's say have like Google Sheets. Obviously Google Sheets is owned by Google, but let's imagine Google Sheets isn't owned by Google. And let's say I can write in row 1 and saying like, yes, like this transaction happened. And I sent Shondra like, you know, $500, right? I write that in there, but on a blockchain, so that you have this thing that's both permissionless and also like trustless, we have to make it so that like, I can't go back and edit that. And also Shondra can't go back and edit that. And Marie can't go back and edit that. So think about it. It's like, and every row can only be completed after each row. Like if we're on row 1, we can't go and edit like row 100. So it's like row 2 has to get filled out, then row 3, and people can't go back and edit each row. And so like, as each of these like kind of Google Sheets get filled up row by row by row, that kind of creates like the chain of like the records in the blockchain. So think of it as like a Google Sheet where everyone has access to it. Everyone can write in it, but once somebody is written in a row, no one can go back and change that row. And it has to happen in sequential order. And then like, once the spreadsheet is filled up, it gets like saved and we start like a new spreadsheet, and it works the same way all over again. And it creates basically like this chain of these like blocks, each block being like the spreadsheet, complete a spreadsheet, like saved. And some of you guys are like, what the heck? But just think of it as like a spreadsheet everyone has access to, everyone can write to, but no one can edit the things that were already like written in there.
Oh, am I supposed to go?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a conversation. Yeah.
The only thing that I would say, which is probably a little bit more technical, but this is what I learned that blockchain was, was that those rows and spreadsheets that she's talking about, there are different nodes that are taking in information, and then they confirm the information by doing these very difficult like math problems. And then once the node that gets it correct, that is them signing off that this is the actual transaction. This is how we confirm that this is right. And so you can't go back and you'd have to go back and do each math problem again and again and again in order to write something new, which is why you can't go back. So I don't know if that like adds anything to what Anne said, because that was a very good definition, but if like just a little bit more technical, that's actually what's happening on the blockchain.
Somebody just asked in the chat, wait, where's the question? Can we give an example of what a sheet would be as an entity and what each row would be?
Yeah, I mean, the sheet itself is the list of transactions, but like a row would be, again, I send Shondra $500. So that's like, let's say that's row 1. And let's say like Marie has like an NFT project, right? And Shondra uses some or all of the $500, or say like 500 of whatever token. She uses that or part of that to actually purchase the NFT. So like the purchase of the NFT, the exchange of this token for the NFT would be like row 2. So like those would be the rows in the document. So anytime there is like you need to spend like a token on the blockchain or any kind of transaction that happens, like that is a record on the blockchain. So all of this is actually like public data that you can see. So when people think about like on-chain, when you hear the term like on-chain data, you're thinking about like, this is data that is like, again, like publicly saved to the blockchain. Everyone can see it, everyone can access it. You can't go back and edit it. But basically what Shondra was talking about is that you have this thing, like all these different nodes that are agreeing like, yes, we all agree that this was a valid transaction and we agreed to save it in this row spreadsheet.
And like each of those things that Anne is talking about is like a row, right? Like you send me money, that is a row. You buy a token, that is a row. And there's this website called Etherscan in which like you literally can see all of your transactions that have happened for a wallet or a contract, so that you can see what those rows would be.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't think I've ever spent so much time talking about Sheets and Google Sheets. Also, like for anyone who is like tuning in for today, like if you have any questions at any point in time, please put them in the chat. I will ask all the questions and we will go through like as much as everything, but like do not be afraid. This is a safe space. The point is to educate ourselves and to ask all the questions, and we'll try to keep it as simple and like one-on-one as possible. So please, I love all the interaction in the chat. Another popular question was, where do people go to continue to educate themselves after this session? Like, are there any resources or other communities that you would recommend people tapping into?
I mean, I'll say yes. Like there are several communities. One we talked about at the top was like Black At. There's a lot of people who come in and are like, I'm new, I want to learn. And I think it's great finding these communities where it's like, it's a small community, you can get to know people and you can kind of like learn in a safe environment, just because, I mean, people often associate like Web3 and crypto with scams, and not everything Web3 and crypto is a scam, but you want to make sure that the people you're learning from aren't going to be like, oh yeah, just give me like, you know, $700. I'm going to make you back like 1,000% on whatever you give me. So you want to make sure that you're learning in like a safe environment where people are also going to teach you how to do this safely. There's other communities that teach people, like Defems is one of them, SheFi is another one. So there's a lot of these like smaller communities that are focused on helping people onboard. There's a lot, you know, there's a lot of things, like if you go to like CoinDesk, like they have a lot of like in the news, like how to learn things. There's also things where I read a lot of Medium just because this space changes like every week, and trying to stay on top of it. And then also like following, like I would say like figuring out who the reputable sources are on Twitter and like following those people, because it is a space that changes a lot.
I would say definitely immerse yourself in different communities, like find where you feel the most comfortable. Because some people like Telegram, some people like Discord. Twitter is a great place. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There is a great site, learnweb3.io. There's also, I think I teach myself crypto.com. So there's different resources. And if you want to, there's always like Coursera has stuff, and if you want to pay for different, but honestly, there's so much free information. And I think as someone had told me, like the earlier stuff might be a little bit more, help you a little bit more than some of the stuff that's coming out, because different people are just trying to put resources together. So just always like double check what you're reading so that you're making sure that it's accurate, but also that it's not just someone's opinion about certain things, but there's a lot of great resources out there. And one thing I can say is the community is so helpful. Like I haven't found one person who's not going to, it's not about like knowledge and making you feel like you don't know. It's more about how can I onboard you? How can I help you be the best that you can be or learn more about this? So I think that's what makes it so exciting too.
I'll definitely say Twitter. And I was asked this question last week, like, who are the people to follow? I would say definitely follow the people here, but then also jump into some spaces. There's probably like, if you don't realize, go to like the spaces section on Twitter. There's all types of spaces happening at all times. And so jump in just to kind of hear what people are talking about. It's hard to name like the specific person to follow, but I would definitely say jump in. And then the other thing when you're thinking about learning is, yes, do your own research, get the information from the people that are providing it, but then also you have to remember that part of learning is just by doing. And so a lot of the times, I learn the most by actually getting into projects and working with people to do group buys. Because once you get into these certain projects, you're in the Discord, you're in the Telegram communities. And like, if you are trying to learn anything, getting into any of those private communities, I promise you, you will leave there knowing like more than you ever thought that you could ever even take in about Web3.
Okay, super helpful. And we'll be sure to collect all of those resources that were mentioned, and we'll include them in a recap email. So you can all check them out afterwards as well. The next question, and I know this term came up earlier in our conversation, is an NFT, like NFT project. What the heck is an NFT? This whole session should just be like, what the heck is Web3? What the heck is an NFT? So if anyone wants to enlighten me.
I was going to let Shondra start since she actually has a token gated.
I knew that was going to happen. I was like, let me see if somebody else wants to go first.
Also, what is a token? On that
okay,
note,
so,
I'm like, there's so many questions.
So I love these questions, but again, I am not a technical person. I'm just telling you what we used the NFT for. So what we use the NFT for is, and what you're seeing a lot of communities use NFTs for, or like what they are these digital art pieces. Don't ask me what the technical, what's happening, I don't know. But what we're using NFTs for is we created a 6-piece collection created by a Black digital artist, a Black 3D artist. And that is the token to get into our token gated community. So we have a digital community in which the only way for you to join the chat, come into Telegram and talk with us, get on allow lists, get access to other benefits that come through with our partnerships is by buying a token. So you can go to our website, you can mint a Blackout NFT, and now you have access to our community. The reason why we made it so that it was a token gated community is because, like Anne mentioned earlier, we wanted people to to have value or to be able to get benefit from being a part of the community. So if you are joining, I don't know, I usually use Soho House as like the example. So if you are a member of Soho House, you pay them $9,000, $5,000, whatever the number is, and you get in. You don't have any ownership in Soho House. You bring in all your friends so that you can have a great time every time you go. But then once you leave, that's it. The only thing you're getting is by not having to pay Soho House anymore. But because we have a token gated community, you actually have ownership in the community, and you have a stake in the value in the community, because as you bring in more people, the value of the community goes up. And if you decide that you want to leave the community, you can sell your token and get money for it, right? Like somebody will buy your token for however much ETH you want to list it for. And so the reason why we did a token gated community and NFT was the token was so that we can make sure that our members are participating in the ownership and equity of what we're building, and that they can say that they have value in the Blackout community.
Awesome. Yeah, and so for everyone who's like, okay, that's awesome, because I think it's really helpful for people to understand that example, Shondra, of like how you can use tokens, how they can be applied. I think like from like, now that people have like an example of how it's used, I'm going to give kind of like, here's like the nerd answer. So when we think about like tokens, right, there's different kinds, but tokens essentially are like what we call like a digital asset. There's like non-digital assets. These are digital assets, and tokens specifically are digital assets usually that like sit on top of a blockchain. Therefore, like the blockchain can track like every single transaction that happens around that token. And there's different like token standards. And specifically like there for like non-fungible tokens, there I think are like only like a few standards that make something non-fungible. And so basically like fungible means like, okay, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, it's like you can kind of like print like a lot of different ones of these, whereas like a like non-fungible one, like I think the fungible is like, I don't know if I ever used that word before Web3. So like non-fungible means this is something where usually you have something that's like one of one, as in like there's only one of these, or it's something where it's like not one of one, but there's like a lot more like limits in terms of like what like how many of these can be printed and how they can be used compared to something like you just printing off like more of like a token that's used for, you know, monetary purposes or other purposes. But just like oftentimes when we look at like non-fungible tokens, a lot of times we're talking about things that are usually like tied to creativity and art. And so some people are like, okay, I'm completely lost, but basically like these are digital assets. They sit on top of a blockchain, and because they sit on the blockchain and we're able to kind of see that public data of like who actually really owns what without these third-party intermediaries, you're able to really easily check somebody's like Web3 wallet and say like, yes, I confirm that like Elizabeth does actually own this asset she claims she owns. Or like I can look at Marie's wallet and say, yes, she definitely owns that. And like the case that Shondra was talking about, there, she's able to check my wallet and say, you have the Black at like NFT, the Black at non-fungible token. Therefore, you're still allowed to be in the Telegram chat. And there's certain things you're able to participate in, because when I check your wallet, because it's on chain, I'm able to see that like, yes, you actually do hold this.
We got a really good question in the chat that I want to share, just because I think particularly like our work at Grid 110 is focused on like equity and accessibility in startups. So this person said, I see a lot of NFT crypto talk in the news with celebrities. Is this Web3 thing something that is best for wealthy people with disposable income, or how is this relevant for an average person, and how can like an everyday person benefit from this?
I mean, I can start by answering that, because for me, I look at it, I come from the social impact space. And so I'm always looking at how do you make things equitable? And I think depending, you know, like there are some NFTs that are priced higher because of who, maybe it's a celebrity, or maybe there's the utility, like what is the product or service that's tied to it. So there are different, and I can't really say it's for everyone, because again, we have to make sure that people have, one, the ability to either buy it, or if, you know, someone has an NFT project and they're giving away tokens, that's different too. So the goal is really, how do we get more people to learn about it, and then also try to be part of communities where you can actually build or create NFTs. So I think that's what's most important, is how do we ensure that other people have the understanding and not just look at it as digital art, because that is great too, because we have a lot of creators and creatives that are doing that. So I wouldn't say that it's only for certain people. I would say the access might be more for those who have the ability, the time, the resources to do it. But hopefully, as more people are doing the work like Shondra is doing with Black At, it's going to help to onboard and get others that may not necessarily have had the ability to learn about it. And I just wanted to add, because what Anne was talking about, because the NFT project that I'm working on is more focused on utility and social impact. And it's, you know, working with a woman who's the first Black woman astronaut to pilot a space shuttle. And it's called Ladies First, and it's focused on hidden figures within industries. And the utility part of it is she wants to get more Black women or women into tech, into STEM. And so having something tied and giving young women access to her is what's tied to having one of those NFTs. So there are different use cases. And I think that's what makes it exciting, is that you can be as creative and think of it, and you can use NFTs for different reasons, and there's no limit, and there's no one to say, well, you can't do that. You can, the level of success depends on your community and how much time marketing you put into it. So there are some limitations, but just the fact of like minting an NFT that's not going to require as much as, having a project.
Okay, I have very strong opinions on this. No, NFTs are not just for rich people. There are a lot of, I'll say, NFTs have actually been around for quite a while, but last summer, they became very, very hot. And there was, I think, a lot of like speculative investment in them, because people would buy into something because they're like, oh, I really like it. And then, we're still technically in a pandemic, but we were less outside a year ago than we are now. And people are like, wait, this project shot up. Like, I should start getting to NFTs. And I think it really kind of created this frenzy in the market, because again, NFTs have been around for quite a while, and they just were not a cool kid thing to do. And it wasn't a get rich quick thing. So it's not necessarily NFTs are only for like making tons of money or for like being like the digital equivalent of holding a Basquiat. It's, there's what Marie and Shondra have been saying, there's a lot of community aspects to it. Not every single project is necessarily a project where it's about like the speculative investment about how much money you're going to get back. Some people are like, if it's an art project, people are like, I just really like the artwork, I want to support it. Some of it is like, hey, there's a community aspect to it. The other thing is NFTs actually have a lot of technology in them that enable a lot of really cool creative features. Like people are talking a lot about, especially entertainment. Let's say if you had an NFT that was actually a ticket, and you used that, like had a ticket that was in the format of NFT, and you were able to say, I have this NFT ticket that like was from like Megan Thee Stallion's like first major concert festival. And let's say it's like 10 years out and you still like hold your first like NFT ticket from Megan Thee Stallion. There's a lot of things that they can kind of tell from your on-chain data about like how loyal of a Megan Thee Stallion fan that you are, that they can now say like, great, I'm going to give you extra benefits, or I'm going to turn this ticket into like a new ticket that's going to give you this like private show on like the 10-year anniversary of her like album like Tina Snow or something like that. And so there's a lot of technology under it. So there's things where, yes, there are a lot of projects that were, did get very expensive, but you don't necessarily have to engage with those to engage with NFTs. Just because this is one that I have engaged with the most, like Black At, like I bought that NFT. It's not like I didn't spend like $1 million to get that NFT. I didn't have to be a rich person to get it, but I'm getting a lot of value out of this. And it's just something where it's like, they've actually been leveraging the technology part of NFTs to actually build a community and like make it into something other than just like wait, how much money is this going to make? So there's more to it than what you see when celebrities are, part of the reason why celebrities are saying like, hey, I'm going to get on this is because the teams making those specific NFTs oftentimes are like, great, we're going to give you a really big cut because we think we're going to make millions off of this project. So you're going to make millions. And the other piece of it is, it's not that regulation doesn't exist at all, but regulation has been murky for some of these digital asset classes. And so for a while, people were like hyping up some of these projects because they're like, if this was any other kind of asset that was non-digital, certain government regulators would have stepped in and said, this looks a lot like a security, or this looks like this looks like that. We don't really like that. But because it's been like kind of undefined, not like that there's no regulation, but it's been undefined for some asset classes and some digital asset classes, it's made it a lot easier for people to say, I'm going to do a get rich quick scheme and then hopefully get out before the regulators kind of like catch up and say, well, you need to pay XYZ and you need to fill out these forms and do all this really unfun stuff that you would have to do if this wasn't kind of like a new asset class.
And I think it's also important to mention that there are new and upcoming ways for anybody and everybody to be involved and to own NFTs. So like Anne mentioned, one of the ways is that there are now ticketing companies where if you buy a ticket, that ticket turns into an NFT. You are now an NFT owner and you didn't have to go on the blockchain and buy anything, right? There are companies that one of my clients, Bandwagon, they're now allowing you to upload your pictures directly onto the blockchain and now you own NFTs. And what's going to happen there is there will be your favorite celebrity that will be able to use your picture, which you turned into an NFT, but now you have the ownership and it is recorded on the blockchain that you own it. And so that celebrity can then give you the credit or pay you for using that picture or NFT. And so there's other ways for you guys to get involved in NFTs without you having to join a community or buy an NFT, but all of that stuff is kind of being developed now. But I'm excited about that, those use cases as well.
Thank you for all of your brilliant answers. I feel like I've seen a lot more like artists and musicians come out with like their own projects, and like I had no idea what that meant or like why they would do it. So this actually gives me a lot of insight into it.
I'm not sure that they all knew either, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not the only one. There's another term that's been floating around that both Marie and Shondra you mentioned, which is like minting. And the only mint I'm familiar with is like the herb. So if you want to elaborate on like, what is it when people say like they're what is it, like minting a token? Wait, I'm completely getting it wrong. But like, what does that mean? And what does it mean?
Do you want me to go first, Marie? This is non-technical, y'all. So basically, what's from the non-technical standpoint. So if you were, and I'm going to just use Blackout because it's the easiest thing for me to use, and I know what I'm talking about in this one particular instance. So if you wanted to join the Blackout community, you would go to our website, blackat.io, and on our website, they would say, mint your token, and you would go there, you would connect your wallet would then you would give access to the Blackout website to access your wallet. You would give access to the Blackout website to take your ETH. However, it's 0.5 ETH right now. And so by minting, it means you are actually, like, the easiest way to understand, like buying a token. That's essentially what's happening, but like there's some technology happening in the background, which is why they use the word mint instead of buy, but I don't know that part.
I was gonna let Anne do the technical part because you gave the explanation. Is no way I was gonna do it. It's like, it actually, the way that I learned it is just like you're turning a digital file into a token. Like I think there's a site, I can't remember what it is, where you can like now through AI just type in some words and it just creates a digital like picture for you. And then you can now go like to decide that I want this to be an NFT. And then you go to OpenSea and then you can just put that digital art there. That's how that's how I learned it. And that's how I have been, I guess, thinking of it as minting. But yeah, it's basically taking something, making it digital, putting it on, and if you want to sell it, like on OpenSea. But Anne, I'm pretty sure you're going to have the best explanation for this.
I mean, I think the explanations here were great. And the thing I might say next might not make sense because it requires introducing a new concept. But the thing that, they're talking about where it's, you're creating this this token is really like, there's this thing called the smart contract, which some of you guys are like, okay, what the heck is a smart contract? So smart contract is usually like specifically the bit of code that is like the thing that is going to make you interact with the blockchain. And usually it's basically, think about, it's usually like a lot of if-then statements where it's like, if these like conditions are met, then do that. So usually like in a smart contract, it's like, great, if these conditions of like, this person has like a valid wallet on like the right network and they give me however much like, of a token that I require in exchange for this, or like, maybe it's not that, maybe it's like, smart contract may say like, hey, every time, we talked about earlier, like on a blockchain with like nodes, they're like, hey, every time somebody actually solves one of these like cryptographic puzzles and like helps like consensus mechanism, like confirm one of these transactions, we're going to now say like, great, like this condition has been met. And we're going to now like create a token from our smart contract, which is again, the thing that's interacting with the blockchain, that's saying like, great, yeah, now you get a token. So it's really this like thing, this piece of code that is like how everything is interacting with the blockchain itself. And it's usually based on like, hey, these terms and conditions need to be like, it's like, basically it's like code that kind of self executes. That's a lot of like terms written into code. The rest of your code is usually things that make it so it's like, okay, you have a pretty website that makes it so you go there, you actually aren't like interacting with the terminal, you're not like coding in the matrix. And that's usually like, okay, that's typical front-end web development. Usually there's like a back-end like, aspect of it. But your smart contract, which is like usually what the blockchain engineers build, that's kind of like the thing behind the scenes that is like, great, that is the thing where if the conditions are met, we're gonna mint. And someone said in the comments, like mint like minting a coin. Yes, like that's gonna now like say like, great, we now have a record that this person now has this coin, specifically from the smart contract, based on if the smart contract says there's, let's say, only 100 coins, or if the smart contract says there's unlimited coins, but every time this thing is met, then I'm going to give a new coin. So it's really just like whatever kind of logic rules you want to build in that are going to be like, again, on the blockchain, like that's pretty much what your smart contract is.
Wow. I feel like I learned so much and I'm like more confused. I'm like, there's just so much to learn. I don't think we can get through everything in an hour. Another question that was submitted. So Grid 110 is a startup accelerator. So we primarily work with a lot of small business owners and startup founders. And so a lot of our founders ask like, how can we utilize Web3 as an organization, as a startup, as a company? Like what are some easy like practical ways that you've seen companies do a really good job of utilizing Web3 or NFT projects?
So I'm gonna start where I'll say, don't be scared of Web3. But I would say experiment on your own before you start experimenting on behalf of your company, because I will just say there are tax implications of the things you're doing. And I actually know someone where she runs a business accounting software for people who like specifically have like digital assets. And one of the biggest things that's a little murky is that, not when I talked about regulation, not everything has a clear-cut answer of like what happens and like how are you accounting for these things. So I would just say, don't be scared of it, but definitely just make sure that you are doing all your homework. And then if you have an accountant or anybody else like that knows a bit about this stuff, that you're consulting with them before you like go all in, just because this does have like legal and tax implications for your business. That's me being like the safety first person. But again, it's a really wonderful world and great to build community. I was going to let like Shondra and Marie talk more about the fun parts of like having this in your business and like how that actually will help you, especially if you are community based.
Marie, you want to go first? I'll go last.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I love that you brought that up, and because I think we forget a lot about governance and making sure that we know, what we're getting into, and people get excited, which naturally it's something new and we're learning about it, but it's always, be responsible and know what you're doing, and also know why. I think that's the big reason. Like, what does your brand want to do? Is it NFTs? Is it like, do you want to build a metaverse? What is it that you actually want to be part of? And I'll say one of the things, I'm consulting with a nonprofit, and one of the ways that we're looking at it is they actually support victim survivors of sexual violence. So one of the ways we're looking at how to incorporate Web3 is building a private metaverse and issuing tokens to those who want to be part of it, to create kind of a safe and trusted space for the victim survivors to be able to talk without feeling that they're going to be attacked. So they can do this through their avatar. So that's kind of like something that, if you think about like social impact or something that you want to do that feels like it's meaningful, but brands can, there's so many different cases and in different industries. So it's really looking at who are we, why do we want to do this, why is it important, and how are we going to do it? Because you want to ensure that the customers you serve, your clients, that it makes sense for them, and what's the value for them, to be part of this. So that's just one example. And I want to work with more nonprofits to kind of look at how do we incorporate Web3 into the work that we're doing.
And I'll say some of the examples that I've seen companies use, Web2 companies use Web3 is through, and this is like a very tactical example, as through loyalty programs. So how do you bifurcate your customers into the most loyal, your most loyal fan base, or the folks that are shopping with you the most often? Or even how do you even reward folks, whether it's for shopping with you or just being a customer? And so they're using NFTs as a way to kind of bifurcate their customer and create a separate, smaller group of customers that they can service on a completely different level. One, for buying the NFT, or for being, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, for being the most loyal. I've also seen companies kind of jump into NFTs just by, instead of offering their product as like a normal product, they offered an NFT. So a product that may have been $20, they said, hey, we're going to get this artist. We are going to create it was a series of products, but we're going to create a series of NFTs. Instead of buying the product, we want you to buy the NFT, and then you'll be able to get the product for free. The NFT was like $200. Like, it was a digital art piece. The product typically was $20. And so, like, I'm not saying do that, but I've seen people be very creative about the offerings that they're buying, or the offerings that they're giving their customers, because it's not just the product. Now there's a long-term play in which there's a series of NFTs that you can provide, that we're providing you, in which have all types of perks and all of these different value points that would not be part of the typical product. So those are like two very like tactical ways that I've seen people use NFTs.
And I just wanted to add
one
more, like with events, because like I've seen where people do that. And I know Gary Vee has like a restaurant here in New York City, which I don't think it's open yet, but if you're an NFT holder, that's your access. So sometimes brands do that, where it's like the NFT gets you into the event, as well as, it helps you get a product or whatever in addition to it. So there's so many different, you could be creative and innovative with this, but it has to make sense for your business or organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm based in LA, and my nephew told me there's like an NFT restaurant in LA that he's trying to get me to take him. So I think I mean, is that your prediction, that we'll see more and more of these things like pop up in our like everyday lives and like restaurants and artists and musicians?
Yes and no. I think we'll see more. I think where we're seeing, specifically the NFT space going is one towards more utility based things, especially, people were saying, oh, it's all about community, but I think now is that time to shine because a lot of people bought in. And then like, some of the prices for people who are like just in it for the money have seen, the prices of some of those NFTs like cool off. So I think now is the time for these communities to really show what community is. And then I think the other thing is really, I think in the next like 5 to 7 years, I think eventually we're not even going to be talking about NFT and this, NFT that. I think it's really, we're going to be like a lot of things with the internet. We don't say this is an internet magazine or like this is an internet this or internet that. Yeah, we say email, but there's so many things that now it's just part of the technology of our day-to-day life. Whereas the features and the capabilities of NFTs are going to be baked in to our day-to-day experiences. And not everything is going to be like obvious to us that it's an NFT, just kind of like AI, where, when AI was like a lot younger, it was like, okay, this is a very special technology and like barely anyone uses it because it's like very expensive to like be able to build your own models. And now it's like people use Facebook and, until recently, a lot of people didn't even realize like Facebook was using a lot of machine learning and AI. It's just like, well, that's just Facebook. And only time people really think about the algorithm is they're like, oh, the Instagram algorithm is terrible. It just shows me all this stuff that I don't want to see. I don't see anyone I like anymore, So it's just one of those things where I think eventually we're going to stop talking about it as much unless it's like, man, the NFT is doing something I hate.
One more question, and going back to Anne, what you mentioned about like security, like make sure that you stay safe and like do your research beforehand. I feel like I've seen and heard of like a couple of horror stories of like people like losing their money or like just things going wrong. So as people are tapping into Web3 and wanting to learn more, like what are some practical tips of like, don't do this or be on the lookout for this? Like, what are some ways that people can stay safe and secure?
Yeah, I'll start because actually the first talk I ever did on blockchain was actually was about scams in the space. But first and foremost, do not trust people in your DMs that are saying they're going to claim to help you set up a wallet. They're going to claim to help you make money. Whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn. I've met people on Instagram who are like, oh, I know I follow you and you're in blockchain. I lost like $700 because this person told me they were going to help me make money. And I was like, your money is gone. The thing to know about this space is that if you send money from your wallet to someone else, there's no way to get it back. It is not a bank. It's not insured. Once it's gone, it's gone. So don't listen to people in DMs that you don't know. Don't ever, some of you may not know what this means, but you'll get this. If you set up your wallet, do not ever give anyone your private keys under any circumstances whatsoever, even if they claim they're an admin for something, even if they claim that they're from the wallet company themselves. Never, ever, ever, ever give someone your keys. And then if you buy like a hardware wallet, which is something that's usually like, it looks like a flash drive or something, do not buy it off Amazon, only buy it from the website itself. There's a lot of ways to get scammed. There's also ways to lose money without getting scammed, but just really, if something sounds too good to be true, you're better off like taking a moment and losing out on an opportunity than you are trying to jump in and then like realizing everything in your wallet is gone.
One of the things I'll add is, because I've heard about this, is like double check the website, because there's a lot of people who will put up an identical site, and they'll be just kind of like one letter off or something, and it will look exactly like the legitimate site. And that's another way, and honestly, I think one of the things that would be helpful is where, I appreciate, Shondra, that you're saying that you got scammed, because I think it's important for us to be transparent about it. There's no shame in like, you got scammed, because it's so easy for you to get so caught up in what's out there and not really like be diligent with paying attention. And because they're so good at it too, like you got to realize that you have to just do your, do the extra work of saying, let me make sure this is right. Let me, don't just join a community, or as Anne mentioned, someone sends you a DM or says, hey, join this Discord. So that happened to someone I know, where it was like, hey, join this Discord, and they set it up so it's exactly like, and it looked like that, and he did a little bit of more digging. So let's, and it'll be great if we can protect each other, but it's kind of hard. But ask, if there's trusted people in your community, ask them and get their input, like, hey, I got this, or I'm thinking about this. Do you know anything? Don't be afraid to ask, because I think that will really help you to make better decisions. And, again, don't feel shameful about it, because it's happening.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is the only reason why I knew that I was scammed was, one, like the money was gone and I did not get the NFT that I thought I was getting. And I asked someone. So I was going to say exactly what Marie said, but if you are confused or unsure, find someone that you trust, like your little Web3 buddy, and you can ask them all types of questions. I think the other thing that has helped me, that it was told to me, is that if you're in Discord, turn off your DMs immediately. If you are going to a particular website, like let's say OpenSea, like type the website in, so that you're not just doing a Google search and then going to the website that looks similar to it and thinking that that's the right one. And then, like Anne said, making sure that you're practicing good wallet hygiene and having both, your cold storage and your storage that you have maybe on your browser or online, but making sure that you have overall good wallet hygiene, I think, is something that's not talked about enough.
Wow, I feel like that was super helpful, and definitely I feel like I would have done all of those mistakes, like buy it off Amazon. Yeah, I would have definitely done that, and like share your keys with your besties or like anyone. So thank you for sharing all of those tips. The last question that I have for all of you is, how can people connect with you? If they're like, I want to chat with Anne and I want to learn more, what is the best way to stay in touch? Is it Twitter, Instagram? Feel free to put it in the chat or say it out loud as well.
Twitter is a good way to find me. So it's Ann T. Griffin. Yeah, at Ann T. Griffin. And then I have my website, which is anntgriffin.com. Either of those is a good way to find me.
I just put my Twitter. It's Marie Roker-Jones. And also I have a weekly Black Women in Web3 conversation on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Twitter Space. And we're just all learning together. So it's really one of those spaces where it's a learning environment, and we're learning as we go.
Well, thank you for coming in. If anyone wants to learn
Elizabeth.
more. Oh, sorry. I thought you
Excuse me. You can find me on Twitter. I put the link in the chat. And then if you are interested in joining the Blackout community, we actually have so many of the Blackout folks in here. There's Lisa and Anne, and I think I saw Anthony and a couple of other folks. Grace has been in here in the chat. If you guys are interested in joining that, you can go to blackout.io. I'm going to put that in the chat as well.
Highly recommend. And they did not tell me to say that. I just am a big fan.
We love
I
that.
just love this sense of community. We'll be sure to collect all of the resources that were mentioned throughout today. I know there were a ton, and we'll send them out in a recap email. And then if anyone wants to learn more about Good 110, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, just at Good 110. Or check us out on our website, which is good110.org. We host a ton of workshops and events, I think every other week, about all sorts of different startup topics. So we hope to see you at the next one. But for today, thank you so much for our amazing speakers for coming in and sharing your knowledge. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.